This is ODAAT Chat, your instant connection to recovery and community, one day at a time. This podcast may contain strong language, sexual content, and spiritual truth. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, friend. Welcome to another episode of the ODAAT Chat podcast. My name is Arlina, and I'll be your host. If you're new here, this is a podcast where my guests and I talk about how to recover from alcoholism and addiction by a variety of different methods. So I'm looking to uncover the moments of clarity, the revelations, and the tools and practices for healing which lead to long-term recovery. Okay, so it was really hard for me not to go all fangirl on my guest, Darren Prince, but I think I managed to sort of maintain my cool kind of, and I'll tell you why I almost lost it. But before I do, I just wanted to share that this episode is sponsored by my new course, Holding Safe Space, Letting Go of Secrets, and Living Guilt-Free. And I feel like this is so important. They say that we're only as sick as our secrets, that it's holding on to our guilt and shame that holds us back from feeling like we deserve better. We have to be willing to let go of that guilt and shame in order to allow ourselves to receive the love we need in order to heal. This is your opportunity to be free. Today could be the day you decide to let it all go, and I'm here to help. If you are ready, go to soberlifeschool.com and look for the class called Holding Safe Space and register for your confidential one-on-one session with me. I truly believe everyone deserves to be free, and I will help guide you through the process. So sign up today at soberlifeschool.com. So back to today's episode with super celebrity agent, CEO of Prince Marketing Group, and most recently, the author of Aiming High, How a Prominent Sports and Celebrity Agent Hit Bottom at the Top. This was written with Kristen McGinnis and the foreword by Prince's very first client, Irvin Magic Johnson. How cool is that? Okay, and I can just tell you that although Darren has been on the press circuit like NBC6, Good Day New York, Dr. Drew Pensky, and Fox, his PR agency reached out to little old me on the ODAAT Chat podcast. So his book hit the #1 on Amazon even before it was released. Was it because guys like Mark Cuban, Kevin Harrington, Hulk Hogan, and Dennis Rodman sent out recommendations on social media? Maybe. I think it's because it's a beautifully written book with great stories and an inspirational message. Darren is actually an amazing storyteller. Darren shows true courage by being so open about his dark and destructive drug and alcohol use. I found Darren to be so humble and genuine, and he had amazing and deeply heartfelt stories. So I can't wait for you to hear them. So with that, please enjoy this episode with Darren Prince. Well, Darren, thank you so much for joining me on the ODAAT Chat podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We just discovered that we have a mutual friend in Kristen McGinnis who helped you write your book. Is that right?
Absolutely. I couldn't have done it without her and Anna David pairing me up with her from Lighthouse Publishing. Kristen just wrote a masterpiece. Not that my story is anything incredible.
Well, you're being modest, but okay.
It's a masterpiece. It's amazing.
Yeah, she's brilliant. I just talked to her today and it was funny. I told her I was speaking to you today and she was like, oh my God. So speaks very highly of you. So it made me even more excited to talk to you, especially talk about your book, Aiming High, Sports and Celebrity Agent Hit Bottom at the Top. That's such a great title. Did you come up with that?
I think collectively we all did, me, Kristen, and Anna. It took a little while till something felt right, and that was it. You know, I didn't want to just write a straight recovery book, and I certainly don't want to write a book talking about myself and my life as a so-called super agent working for these iconic figures, and I thought it was kind of right in the middle. It was perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, really great job. So before we dive into the book and all the glitzy fun stuff, what I typically do is I start out asking my guests, what they do professionally, and I will certainly have a bio, but did you, in your own words, kind of want to describe who you are and what you do?
Sure. Darren Prince. I'm the president, CEO, founder of the Prince Marketing Group. We've been in business for 24 years. We're a sports and celebrity marketing agency. I've represented and still currently represent Magic Johnson, Hulk Hogan, Dennis Rodman, Charlie Sheen, Larry Bird, Chevy Chase. Burt Reynolds was a client, just passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We have so many icons over the years that I've represented. Muhammad Ali, Smoking Joe Frazier, Evel Knievel. They've all since passed. Ric Flair, the wrestler. It's just we're very blessed to work for some extraordinarily talented global icons that keep their brands front and center of the marketing world and makes our job easier. So,
right, I bet.
That's for sure.
No, that's so exciting. I can imagine that you must just have stories for days, and I'm dying to know, how did you pick which stories to highlight in the book?
I think Anna and I just spending so much time going back and forth with meeting each other, phone calls, hours on end, stuff just came up. I really think for the most part, we picked what were the best ones. Of course, there's, a handful of them that I figured out afterwards I left out, but I can always bring those up on the book tour here. And,
That's right.
when I do speeches and whatnot, because I know everybody's always enamored and fascinated by the world of sports and entertainment and celebrities and musicians and athletes. And, for us, it's our job. We don't feel like it's work at times, which is great because we love what we do. Yeah, we love what we do. But believe me, just like any other profession, there's stresses, there's ups and downs and in-betweens, and you really have to be on top of your game.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I'm super excited to, go through the book, and we'll talk about some of that stuff. But typically what I do, I'm really interested in you and your story. And I thought we might be able to spend a little time sort of kind of going over, kind of what makes you you. And typically I start with like family of origin stuff. So can you tell me a little bit about your parents? Like, what did your dad do professionally?
Sure. My parents grew up in, you want to know their origin, like full or just career-wise?
Sure, whatever you think is relevant.
Say they grew up in Hillside, New Jersey, where I was born and raised until I was 7 years old. My father passed away about a year and a half ago. I had a very, very special relationship with him. He was my mentor, best friend, taught me so much in the business world. Got to have his son back, an 8.5-year sober son. And that was a gift that he was able to see that and to the end, and I knew that when he was leaving, he had me in the best place he's ever seen me in my entire life. And my mother's still around. She's doing okay. She's 75. I've got a sister that just turned 50. We're a close family. We moved to Livingston, New Jersey when I was 7. My sister and I all went to school in Livingston, graduated Livingston High School. My parents, till the day my dad died, lived in Livingston, and we recently sold the house about over a year ago and moved mom to another town. Mom moved to a town called Florham Park, New Jersey. And you want history on personal levels, being that this is a recovery podcast? You want me to go into that a little bit? Because everybody has something in their family, I like to think.
Oh, so absolutely. Give me the dirt.
My father's side of the family had nothing. I was told his father was an alcoholic because he had severe arthritis, but not an alcoholic by choice, an alcoholic to just deal with the everyday pain. My mother's side of the family is where the isms come from, but don't tell her that. She doesn't want to hear it. Brother, who's my uncle, and a father figure is the one that got me into recovery because he's been in the rooms for many years. He's been coming around for decades, and finally put a good streak of time together. And I don't ever really, as I tell people, blame, it was in my DNA, it was this, it was that. I just know something happened to me when I first experimented with drugs and or alcohol. And I don't blame it on my mother, father, sister, the origin. I just think it was me, and it just made me feel complete the first time I ever tried it.
How old were you the first time you tried anything?
12 years old. I was at sleepaway camp. I had horrible stomach pains one night, and I asked the counselor to take me to see the nurse. And she gave me this green liquid in a cough syrup cup, and it just tasted like complete crap. But about 3 minutes later, I wasn't thinking that. As I was walking across the softball field, I felt like Superman. Everything for once made sense in my life. I grew up with the label of having a severe learning disability, special education. I was in small classrooms, and I feel that whatever it was at that time, that first time I experimented, for real pain, it just made me fit in. And I went back to the bunk, started being the funny, talkative guy with the age. I got the nerves to run next door to the bunk that had all the girls that were my age, and I was flirting and talking and chatty, and I just felt like a social butterfly. I went to bed that night thinking nothing of it, did all my activities the next day. I'm lying in bed that second night with absolutely no stomach pain whatsoever. How I'm just thinking how incredible that feeling was. And I said to the counselor, my stomach's killing me. I got to go back to the infirmary. I was at 12 years old. I remember the feeling like yesterday. And I did that for 3 weeks. Eventually, my mom and dad came up for visitation day. My mom found out they were giving me liquid Demerol and flipped the fuck out, excuse my French, on the owners and the nurses. And
they were giving you liquid Demerol?
Yes.
That is insane. You were 12 years old?
I was 12 years old. I guess back then, I mean, I don't know. It was one of those situations where I guess the pain was so severe, they didn't know if I need to go to the hospital that first night. And I don't know. I mean, it might not have been as controlled of a substance as it is today. You're talking back in 1982.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's crazy. So your parents found out and were really upset about it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't, you know, like I said, I know for me at the time, it was the perfect feeling that I was looking for. So whether it was then or it could have been a couple years later, I still would have had an experience that, you know, would have changed the way I felt. So there's nothing I could have done, you know?
So let me ask you, when you first took that liquid Demerol, yeah, it must have lifted all the like self-consciousness that you had felt.
All of it.
Because
it all went right away. The fear of inadequacy, insecurities, feeling of less than, not being a part of, it all went away. All of it in one shot, one little gulp made all that go full circle, and I felt whole.
Absolutely. So when you were growing up, were you bullied as a kid, or did the kids make fun of you?
I wasn't like bullied. I was more teased, I'd say. You know, for being special ed, kind of called, being called an idiot or, you know, moron, stuff like that by some of my friends, or that was a horrible word to use, but they would say I was in the RO rooms, which meant retards only. So, you know, you hear this stuff at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And then I remember teachers in the full-size classrooms that had 40, 50 kids. I'd be in the back row with my friend Rob, John, and Carmen, and a couple of my other friends that were in those same classes. And the teacher would start handing out all the tests, and she would isolate us in the back and literally announce, "I'll get you guys your test in the last row once I'm done with everyone else." So,
wow, just again, completely insensitive.
You don't think at that moment it's doing much, but it is, because you're in those early developmental years, and it's crushing and destroying your self-confidence when you look back at it.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense, right? It's like you're suffering from low self-esteem and you're suffering through all these years, and then you get the magic liquid and suddenly that's removed. So you chase that feeling from then on. Is that a fair statement?
100%. Plus, you know, I had a little bit of you know, I love her to death, but a neurotic Jewish mother. So I think some of that made me kind of more susceptible to anxiety and nervousness and just being in the household. And so again, that just took that anxiety away. I was, at times I was homesick. I didn't want to be away from the house. Right. I remember all these little feelings that would come up of just like to sit in the house with my parents, or sit in a room by myself and watch TV or play with my baseball cards. Something that just made me feel comfortable being by myself.
Right, right. So were you always a sports fan? You were into the baseball cards when you were young? And
the baseball cards were everything to me when I was young. That was right alongside with drugs. That was my first love, right up there, because I realized that statistically I became a genius. To this day, you can give me a number and a percentage and people's heads spin when, you know, that they could be like, oh, that's a $2,800 credit card charge plus a 1.5% service fee, and boom. I know right away, you know, what the number is going to be is $42, whatever it might be. And
Wow.
I studied the back of baseball cards and the same thing. I knew a batting average, how many home runs, how many RBIs, their on base percentage. And I think I also did that because it made me feel cooler around my guy friends that, I was like the walking encyclopedia on what a baseball player hit the year before, how they played the night before. And sports was always a cool way to communicate and get along with the boys. I loved playing sports. I was a decent athlete, played baseball, played tennis. But yeah, I think baseball cards became a savior to me. Trading with your guy friends, that's what guys do, just like girls have their Barbie dolls and whatnot. And then eventually it turned into a pretty big business.
How were you able to parlay the cards into a business?
What happened was, as my guy friends started dating at 13, 14, 15 years old, baseball cards became a little corny, a little like out of style. And I didn't see it as such. So I held different odd jobs. I had a newspaper route. I was a busboy at a diner, and I squeezed orange juice at a local supermarket. And I would take every dime I had, and slowly but surely, every one of my friends I knocked out one after the other. I'd buy all their collections, $50, whatever it was. And
Genius.
In the book, I go downstairs to my dad, and I'm 14 years old, and I said, "Dad, I need insurance on my baseball cards." And he looks at me like I'm nuts. And he goes, "Well, like, whatever. Well, okay, so what do you need?" I said, "Probably like 8, maybe 9. And he's like, "All right." He goes, "Look, I'll call the homeowners. I'll try to add $1,000 worth of coverage onto the homeowner's policy." And I'm a 14-year-old kid. I'm like pulling out his sweatpants. I go, no, Dad, 8 or 9,000. And now his head is spinning. He goes, "What? How in the world? What did you do to accumulate $8,000 or $9,000 worth of baseball cards?" So I run upstairs. I get these shoe boxes. Everything is meticulous, like it's his own store. Everything's in a holder with a professionally priced sticker on it, like completely like Rain Man type. Like you would look at this and be like, how in the world did somebody put the time and energy and effort in to prepare this so magnificently? And he took such interest in learning about it, and then he challenged me. And I showed him all the prices. I showed him the price guides, and he goes, "It's great that they're worth all this, but who the hell are buying these?" And I pulled out a newspaper ad. There was a baseball card show. At that point, maybe they were running for 2 or 3 years around the area. And for $20, you get a table, 6-foot table, and you set up all day for 6-7 hours, and you wheel and deal, buy, sell, trade. And that was it. And my friend Steve Simon, who runs my company now, is my vice president. We go back 38 years. Him and I split the table, $10 each. And I spent 2 weeks preparing every single night as if it was the biggest moment of my life. He spent maybe 2 days because it wasn't even that important to him. And I made over $1,000 on that Sunday afternoon. Wow. And the light bulb went on in my head. And I remember being up at 5 a.m, the day of that baseball card show, like I finally found my purpose. I knew that I was going to go in there and I was going to wheel and deal and listen to different techniques my dad taught me, who was in direct mail coupon advertising.
Very cool.
Yep. So that was it. And then slowly but surely, I had stockbrokers buying from me. I even had random athletes, and I started this mail order business that at 3 o'clock after school ended every single day, I'd be home buying and selling of it. There was no internet back then. So I'd buy and sell different dealers and get the cards that these guys want. I'd add a percentage to it, and became a booming business.
And that was really a relationship-based business back then, right? Because it was no internet. Like people are so, easy come, easy go. But so you were able to network and build relationships with these people. And
exactly what it was. And there was a lot of trust. I was fair with everybody. But, the one thing that people don't realize, when I hit that show floor, and there was a convention, and little by little went from high school to my late teens to my early 20s, I became within the industry a celebrity. There was me and 3 of my friends I write about in the book. We were making hundreds of thousands of dollars as teenagers. And we joked around that we were legal drug dealers. Like we literally were just making tens of thousands of dollars on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, buying and selling. And we each had our own niche. And we got written up in USA Today, the New York Post, Sally Jesse Raphael, TV show appearances. And the thing that I did that they didn't was I was high the entire time. When I got on that floor of that trade show, I was always on something. Whether I was smoking weed, popping a pill, throwing back a few drinks, I couldn't be myself. And I felt like I arrived. But when that show ended, I felt empty again. I was back at home. feeling like that loser inside, feeling like that special ed in the, as my friends would call it, the retards only room. And, I was just always constantly chasing that feeling of acceptance and being cool and being the guy. And from the outside, everybody thought I was in that industry. But little do they know what I was thinking when I was home alone in my own head.
Yeah. So that's so amazing, though, that you found your purpose so young. Why do you think you were able to learn to negotiate? Like, did you just come by it naturally, this ability to negotiate and wheel and deal?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came naturally. A lot of it came from my dad. My dad always taught me, even in business, that the money's made in the buy. It's never made when you sell. They have to buy harder. And then I also learned from the biggest icon in the history of the baseball card business, who actually passed away. For anybody listening to this, they'll know the name. He passed away a few weeks before my dad in 2017, Alan Rosen, Mr. Mint. And Alan Rosen, Mr. Mint was this big, flashy, diamond dripping everywhere, would have hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash in his showcase advertising to buy the biggest collections all over America. And I just knew that there was something cool and sexy and different about it, that we were attracting some pretty heavy, influential investors to look at this business, that it was a real solid blue chip investment. And instead of buying stocks, you'd have these brokers coming, writing enormous checks to buy, Mickey Mantles and Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio. And I was in the middle of it, and just, it was an amazing time in my life. It really was. And I just learned from the best. I did a lot of listening. And then once I found my niche to market myself and my own little gimmick, it was over. I mean, it was, you see that scene, I laugh sometimes, Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo. And the 6 stewardesses. That was me. I would go to every show. I had the most meticulous display, 6 models with me. Embarrassing looking back at it now, because that's not my personality. But I always needed to want to make sure I stood out and feel so large, because inside I actually felt so small.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. And so, okay, so it's amazing that you were able to be so successful, even though that you were on drugs and doing all that stuff. You don't feel like it hindered your business at all? I mean, obviously not, but do you think you could have done better?
I know a lot of people, it's funny you said that, because I know a lot of people say there's certain athletes that drank and smoked a lot. Like, how much better would they have been? I don't believe that. I can tell you, just like a lot of people, it worked. I mean, I was a networking machine, and nobody would have ever thought I was on something, because those were the years it worked. I mean, it worked for me up into my late 20s, and eventually went from that to a sports memorabilia company doing private autograph signings with some of the biggest names in the world, and I parlayed that to the highest level, being an agent. And, nobody would have known. I mean, it didn't matter if Donald Trump was in the room, or Kobe Bryant, or Michael Jordan. Darren Prince was going up to them, shaking hands, giving them a hug, saying what's up in a very non-threatening, laid-back, chill way, getting their phone number. I was a networking machine. I mean, I really was, until it turned on me.
Turned on you. What about your mom? Did she not see this was going on with you?
She knew there was a problem. She didn't know the full extent of it. She actually read the book cover to cover a few days ago. And because she did a lot of crying, her heart was aching. But in the end, she knew that her son did something really beautiful by putting this out there, that she knows how many children I'm going to help of other parents, and how many adults that are sick and suffering. And this preventative message of, don't do what I did. They have the courage to speak up and tell someone that something's wrong. Just know that,
Do you think there was anything your mom could have said to you to get you off of drugs earlier? Because I know a lot of parents really torture themselves about their kids if their children are using. And it's my suspicion that there was nothing she could have done. What do you think?
Nothing could have done it. Well, you got to think about this too. Arlina, I had tremendous success. So who's going to tell me it wasn't working?
Right.
Nobody was going to tell me. You know what I'm saying? So when you're making the type of money I was making, and I had a little bit of fame too on top of it. So I see what happens with these athletes. I have fame within my industry, not in mainstream in the world, but within my industry. And I see what happens to some of these athletes, these icons, these musicians. We're losing them left and right. I mean, who's going to tell you've got enablers around you. And even if you don't have enablers, who's going to cut you off from your money? Who's going to, get power of attorney to do it? Just doesn't happen. You have access to the best of everything. And if they cut you off from one doctor, you're going to find another one. If they cut you off from another dealer, you're going to find another dealer because you've got the money, you've got the resources. And the reality is when you've got that sort of notoriety, you can get anything you want with it too. It's just a deadly combination.
It is a deadly combination. Yeah. So that's really scary. So walk me through when things started to turn for you, because it sounds like, you were able to be very financially successful and you gained notoriety within your community. When did it start to shift to having problems? Like what kind of consequences were you facing?
I'd probably say I got arrested 4 times in my early 20s, but I wasn't accountable for any of it. I thought I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, different possession of drug charges. I wound up losing my license for a year, didn't take it seriously. Was in a probation period for 3 years, eventually got out of the probation. And when I started the agency and Magic with my first client, I just knew, look, it's time to take this seriously. No more illegal drugs. Can't drink and drive. You've got the responsibility now of managing a renowned icon. I got to do the right thing. I started developing sciatica from the stress, which became a magnificent excuse to get opiates. So now it's just about like drinking when I wasn't driving and taking opiates every single day. And any doctor would give them to me. I didn't have to go to the street. When you smoking Joe Frazier and different clients that were alive, at the time I'd bring them to my doctor's office, get them a signed boxing glove, put them on the phone. What do they think? I'm with this super successful guy that's got back issues. I got to take care of him. He's my man. And, so it was just like, I didn't have to go to the streets. And it probably turned on me, I would say about 5 years into Prince Marketing Group when, from the outside, you would have thought I had it all. And now I had real mainstream notoriety. I was on some of the biggest talk shows on behalf of my clients. I was in New York Post page 6 every single week, which was the TMZ before TMZ.
Right,
Daily News, Russian Malloy, all the big gossip columns at this event, bringing Pamela Anderson, who I managed for a short period of time at 25, 26 years old. And that's the other problem. When you find yourself around these regal icons at that time, like, I don't think I have a problem. I'm thinking, if anything, it's helping me.
Right, yeah.
So I'm even fighting my own brain on to think, like, what's really going on here? Are there other problems? The last thing I'm really addressing is, am I an addict? It's been going on a long freaking time. But eventually it turned on me, and I feel that the pills became my kryptonite. Like any of us, especially the opiate addicts, we know there was no effect anymore, zero. The only thing they did was stop me from going into severe withdrawal. And the magic pills weren't magic anymore. And nothing I can do could get me back to that mindset where I felt I could operate on the highest level. And, I tried for years. Doctors put me on antidepressants, anxiety medication, mood stabilizers. I got put on Suboxone in 2005. Spoke to Dr. Drew when he called me about putting Dennis Rodman on Celebrity Rehab. And I thought I was all cool telling him I'm on Suboxone and I've been sober for a year and a half. And he was the first person to tell me, that's not sober if you're on Suboxone for a year and a half. They're very dangerous. And I heard him, but I wasn't listening. So I continued to take it. And it just got bad. In 2006, I called Magic Johnson, who my biggest client and my biggest professional mentor, and I told him about a bunch of challenges I was having, and the only one that he was concerned with was the opiates. And still took me another year and a half to find my bottom. I remember Evel Knievel passed away, one of the most revered icons, in the past 50 years. I put him right up there with Muhammad Ali and Elvis. And
sure, yeah.
I had the privilege of working for him for many, many years. All these extreme sports guys today, he's the godfather of it all.
Sure.
And I didn't know how to handle it. It was the first celebrity that I ever lost. And I wound up going off the Suboxone, got back on Oxys and Percocets for the funeral. And Matthew McConaughey, I'll never forget, called my office to talk to me about the funeral arrangements. somehow his publicist put him in touch with me because they knew I was his marketing agent, and he was going to play evil in his movie, in his life story. So I said, look, Matthew, when I'm there, I'm going to be there with Joe Frazier. I'll come find you. We'll say hello. And I remember walking in to this arena. There were so many people at the memorial, and I saw him sitting at the front row on the left side. We were on the right, and I had to walk over to him. It's the first time I felt my magic was gone. It was gone. There was nothing left in my tank. I was like, did I just freaking come off Suboxone to flip flop and go back on the real shit right now? What the heck is going on?
Right.
And, it was scary. Just very, very dark time. But I finally got clean. I was on an opiate blocker. I was drinking. I was on a mood stabilizer. I was on antidepressants. I was on an Ambien to sleep. I was on anxiety medication. I mean, talk about a combination. It was hell.
It must have been so scary to be so out of control that way with so many pharmaceuticals. And did you feel like, did you finally reach that place of like hopelessness where you wanted to reach out and ask for help?
Yeah, I did. I didn't just reach hopelessness. I reached the jumping off point, as they say. And then thank God to God, I was one of the lucky ones to receive the gift of desperation.
Oh,
and I knew my uncle and his then girlfriend that came into my life on July 1st, 2008, and July 2nd was that date where I had that moment of clarity, and that drop of rain fell on my face, and I hit my knees, begging, shaking God for help with the last of my opiates in my hand, which I thought were anxiety medication that she was allowing me to take to detox, and they were opiates.
Oh, shit.
I stood up. It was still the greatest moment of my life, and because it wasn't me standing up, and I heard a voice say, "I got you when you're ready." And my hand opened up. I flushed the pills. I did exactly what my uncle said, even though I was resistant. I found an AA meeting online in New York City, where I was in the upper 90s, and on the cab ride over, sitting there shaking, sweating, telling myself, what the heck just happened? For the first time in my life, I wanted to stay sober a little bit more than I wanted to stay high. And that was it. That's the day, July 2nd, 2008. I walked into a room with 150 people. All that success, everything we just talked about, never made me feel whole. I had to be in a church basement at 9 o'clock at night near Harlem in New York City with 150 plus people, putting my hand up, telling everybody how sick and desperate and tired I was and I needed help. And there was a love, there was a warmth, there was a feeling of acceptance that it's unexplainable. It's just something where you feel like you finally arrived. You feel like this is the place that I was meant to come my whole life. And I don't regret the past because I know everything happened the exact way that it was supposed to happen. And that was my moment. That was my time. And I took advantage of the opportunity. I heard the signs. I felt his presence. And I've never been somebody like real religious or spiritual, but I just knew there was a power greater than myself that brought me to my knees that night and dragged me to a meeting in the upper 80s or upper 90s of New York City. And I never looked back. I wanted this more than anything I ever wanted in my life.
Wow, that's amazing. No, I'm so moved by your story because I think anyone who has really struggled with addiction and has faced that hopelessness and said that prayer, the prayer of desperation, which is God help me. I've been there too, and it's the moment where everything changes. Everything. Yeah. Did you go to that meeting by yourself?
I was married at the time. My now ex-wife. She left after about 5 minutes. It was very difficult because she heard too much about me, obviously, and it was hard for her to sit there and deal with it and watching me. So she wound up leaving, going back to the apartment, and I just saw the light. I was like, holy crap, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I've been to meetings before.
Oh, you did? Why?
Yeah, I tried meetings. I never got it. I'm not these people. I don't have their lives. The ego. I'm still successful.
I'm not like these people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Haven't you found, though, that even though the circumstances are different, the feelings are all the same?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
And we all get there we all fund our bottom somehow, some way. We're all egomaniacs with inferiority complexes, you know. And I realized on that day, my buddy Dan, who's in Orange County, he's got 30 years, a very dear friend of mine. We always talk about it. It is an ego-crushing fellowship. And you want to stay sober, you better keep that ego crushed.
Yeah.
Because there's times I'm sitting in a parking lot at a church in New Jersey or California, and I go from one call with Charlie Sheen to Hulk Hogan to Magic to Rodman to a deal for Joe Montana, and I put the phone down like it's showtime. I got to remember who I am first. And I put the phone down. I walked through those church basement doors. I remember first and foremost, I'm a degenerate freaking drug addict, and that's the most important thing for me to remember. What I do as a job is just what I do. I need to remember who I am, and most importantly, give this gift away to keep what I got.
That's amazing that you're able to do that. I mean, I can imagine it would be easy to get, sucked back into your world. But, it sounds like, Darren, that moment of clarity that you had when you asked for help, there's something about the humility, experiencing true humility sort of levels the playing field, don't you think?
100%. 100%. That's what I said. I mean, there was a struggle the first year or two. A lot of my guys, they liked that asshole Darren. Even some of my celebrities, if there was an issue with the deal, something was being tweaked or not run properly, I had to practice the principles. I had to do the 11 steps that I had to try to understand people instead of being understood. I needed to learn to say what I mean what I say, and not say it mean, and get the exact same result. Because as you know, Arlina, if you don't, you're going to get that emotional hangover that's worse than any drug and drunk hangover, and you don't know when it's going to leave you. I don't want to go to that place. But they can have their egos and whatnot. For the most part, my guys know, and women that we represent, they know where I was going to cover their ass. But I'm a different Darren now. I do that ego. That's got to stay crushed, and just understand that everyone's just one and the same, trying to do the best they can with what they have. And I'm nobody special. I used to eat up, some of this so-called super agent stuff, and Christian wrote it back best in the book. At some point, I realized I had a special talent for managing special talent, and that's the best way to put it.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, when you were talking about crushing your ego, have you ever heard that term, your ego is not your amigo?
Yes, exactly.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
But it really sounds like, you replaced your ego with love, right? And I don't mean to sound super corny.
Absolutely.
Because I think that humbling experience is really rooted in love. Like, you're connecting with people on a heart level, no matter where they come from. Because you walk into these meetings and people are very different, right?
Oh yeah, yep. And you'll never. This is another thing. This isn't ego or to impress. It's more to impress upon you. I've been to more road meetings than anybody, probably in the history of this fellowship, because I travel the world. Just in the past 7 months, Sydney, Australia, Anguilla, Monaco, Saint-Tropez, Toronto, Montreal, Fiji, Honolulu, Maui. It's the greatest joy of my life that I know anywhere I am, I can go to a meeting and walk into a room. I was in Honolulu 3 weeks ago with my fiance, and very different people, islanders. But every morning, every night, there was a meeting right by the beach, and I would sit there on the ground with the rest of them. And some people were living in shelters, and it didn't even matter. I don't need to talk about what I do. I talk about why I'm there, what's the purpose, and how we're all one and the same. And whether you have 1 day or 30 years, we all have the moment of right now. And we're all trying to do the best with what we have without picking up a drink or a drug 1 day at a time. And I'm hugging these islanders at the end of every single meeting. Both of us have tears in our eyes, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world, because you leave something like that and realize that the rest of your day is now going to be the best of your day, because you took that time out for yourself, and you also did it for some other people. And none of us, we don't know anybody when you're on a road meeting, but you know everybody. And you're not home, but you're right at home. And I know it makes me be a better Darren, so I could be there for my fiance, my friends, my family. Not that I'm always perfect. I screw up all the time.
Well, you're still human, yeah.
For it, and try to change the way we act, change the things that we do, and just become better. We're human. Doesn't, just because the program starts working, it doesn't mean life gets perfect and we become perfect.
No, absolutely not. I think actually we develop an awareness of where we're not perfect, but we're able to find a capacity of like empathy for ourselves and others. And it's a beautiful way to move through life. So let me ask you something. As you're talking about all these different meetings, a friend of mine and I were kind of joking around about the differences in meetings. Like, for instance, in San Jose, it's at every single meeting, people will ask for newcomers in their first 30 days. And they say, this is not to embarrass you. This is just to get to know you better. Do you find that is something that they do all over the world, or is that?
No, it's amazing. I'll tell you some great experiences. This is Sydney, Australia, because my fiance is from Sydney. We go back there every December, for the New Year's and the holidays. And I went to a Sunday meeting at 11 o'clock, right off of downtown Sydney. And they love my accent, a New Jersey accent. When they asked anybody from out of town or visiting, I said, yes, I'm Darren from the United States. Hey, Darren. And so at the end, they asked me to take everybody out. And I said, okay. I said, can we have a moment of silence for those still sick and suffering? And who brought us here today? I said, our Father. And all of a sudden, 100 people, no. Like, right in the, like, what did I say? They go, we only do the serenity prayer here. So we went right into the serenity prayer. And then my mates, that you call them, that were that I just met, said, it's too religious to go into the Lord's Prayer. We don't do that. In Brisbane, Australia, where my ex-wife was from when I first got sober, and I had thank God, because this is important to clear out the wreckage of my past, I had the ability to do an 8th and 9th step to her family. Even though it didn't work out with us, at least I knew that I did the right thing. And in Brisbane, you put your hand up and you go to the stage and you go on a microphone and you speak. So the formats are very, very different.
So you have to volunteer if you want to share?
You have to volunteer, then you walk up, the microphone's on, you stand in front of the microphone and say what you're about to say. In New Jersey, I'm just used to sitting there, putting your hand up and somebody picks you and you say what's on your mind, Oh,
that's interesting. Here, people will call on you. So there's like a secretary who kind of runs the meeting, and then there is a chairperson who tells their story. And after they're done telling their, share their experience, strength, and hope, they will call on people. So, it gets kind of political. Like, you'll get the same people sharing over and over again at the big meetings.
What I like about the meetings in LA too is they give you like a number where you have to pull out of like this is a really funny story, and I could talk about it because he was open about it. It's not breaking his anonymity. So Dennis Rodman, the first 4 or 5 months of this year, was going to AA meetings with me. He was seen in West Hollywood, and he was seen in New York. We actually went to one in Dallas, and he really has a strong introverted side to him.
Really?
So we went. And it was an open meeting, and my fiance went with us because she wanted to hear it. And they started passing the hat around. And Dennis is like waving off, no, I don't want a number. I don't want a number. Don't give me a number. Don't give me a number. So he's like shoving the number that he got out of the hat in my hand and sticking it in my pocket. And then it was a small meeting. There was only like maybe 20 people.
So he had to share.
Go. He got so nervous. He just got up and walked outside. He was waiting for me outside because he didn't want to get picked.
Oh, poor guy. He's like an extroverted introvert.
I was like, doesn't it make you feel great, though? You're walking into a room where people, they treat you a little differently when they first see you, but they just want the best for you. It's not, I know your world. I know what it's like being an icon and a celebrity, how many people want to take advantage. Like, it's like, no, it's pretty cool, because I could tell they're genuine people that just want me to do good and want me to stay sober.
Yeah. That is so funny. So in LA, they have you draw numbers so that the same people don't get called on all the time?
Yeah. So it was funny. He didn't want his number getting picked, so he just put it in my hand and he walked out with like 15 minutes to go.
That's hilarious.
So that was an unusual format. I've been coming to LA meetings for years because I'm out there so much, and now I'm living out there. I've got a place, and I never saw that before, where they walk around, they like pull the number, and if it matches, you come up and speak. Just getting back to, I think it's the same message at every meeting. It's just such a different, format depending on what part of the world you're in.
Right.
England's are always toughest when I go in London, only because their accents are so thick. So it's so difficult to hear in London everything that they're saying, but you hear different lingo and terms. They have a word out there in recovery that they call convincers. And a convincer, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. You've been around long enough now. So a convincer in London is somebody that wants to go back out and test the waters again to make sure that they are still an addict or an alcoholic, and they call it a convincer.
That's a bad idea. That's what that is.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's like they're idiots for even having that term.
Yeah, I know. Let's not make that an option. No, that's interesting. So when you...
I don't need a convincer.
Well, you have your experience. That's enough, right?
Yeah.
So how did you go about picking a sponsor? Did you do the traditional route and pick a sponsor and work the steps out of the book and do the whole nine?
My friend Dave, who was in the fellowship for a little while, actually told me that this guy that was a spiritual giant, his name's Stephen Delaval. He wrote a best-selling book called Rising Above the Influence, a recovering heroin addict, alcoholic. He's got now probably 28 years, I believe, 29 years. Was in prison for 3.5 years, and now he's running one of the biggest rehabs in New Jersey. And maybe after a month, I would hear him share from time to time, and my friend Dave, who's living in Florida, called me up and said, "You got to find this guy, Steve. This is, good-looking Italian guy, slick back hair with glasses." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, Dave, I know who you're talking about." He goes, "Go up to him, mention my name. I'm going to call him. Tell him you want him to sponsor you." And it was like a marriage right off the bat. I mean,
just a good fit.
He didn't give a crap what I did. It was exciting to a degree, but he just knew you're like anybody else in this room.
Yeah,
okay?
Your life is on the line.
Remember that. And I don't care. He's like, he goes, remember, he goes, that the first month or two, he said, he would joke around, "You still have an ego the size of New Jersey, so we need to trim that down to the size of a freaking ant." And little by little, I mean, he was the best sponsor. I hate even using that word because he's my brother for life. We've done so much. He tells me I helped him more than he ever helped me, which is bull crap. He was going through a very, very rough period the first 5 years of my sobriety while I was flying high on the pink cloud. And I was there for him. And I never understood when I would call him every day and I would apologize. And he'd be like, "What are you apologizing for?" Because you're helping me every time you call me. And now I understand it because I've got some sponsees and pay it forward. And, he didn't rush me through the steps. Again, I've heard in Canada, I've heard in LA, some people talk about, you got to get through them in 3 months, 6 months. Now, for me, it took about probably 1.5 years until we went through steps 4 through 12. And we went through them pretty quickly. He just wanted me to keep working the first 3 steps, which was going to a meeting, not picking up a drink, not picking up a drug, reading the first 3 steps over and over, practicing the principles, learning prayer, learning to turn it over when life got tough. And just continuously remind myself I'm a member of the no matter what club, that no matter what comes my way, I'm not going to pick up a drink or a drug. And once he knew I had that down, I went to his office. We knocked out the rest of them literally within, a few days. And at that point, I was probably close to 2 years sober.
Yeah, I think it's so important to honor your process and honor your own timing. Like everybody does it different, right? And it doesn't say anywhere in the book that you have to get through your steps in a certain amount of time.
I think you did it right for me because there was embarrassment and shame. And if I did it after knowing him for 2 or 3 months, this is just my opinion. Everybody's got their own way. I would have felt I wouldn't have known him well enough to open up about all that. At the point when we get the rest of the steps, forget about it. I was an open book. I'm like, everything already. What do I got to hide from you? And just make it the rest of clearing out that spiritual core. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. What do you think made him such a good sponsor? Was it just that you guys were a good fit?
But we're a good fit. I mean, he's a spiritual giant in New Jersey. Like I said, he wrote a best-selling book too. He speaks a lot. He works at New Jersey's biggest rehab. I just think we were such a good fit, and we have very different ways of giving back to this day. He is a hands-on sponsor. I do a lot of traveling, which makes it really tough to sponsor a lot of people. So I have a connection with a lot of guys into the room. I have a couple sponsees, but outside of that, for me, it's very difficult because you want to see your sponsor. You need to be able to bump into them in a meeting, a couple times a week, or if there's a problem, meet them at Starbucks or for a bite to eat. And it becomes a little bit of a liability now. So my way of giving back is through the book, through speaking at schools and colleges and charitable events and businesses. I actually I'm working now with Speakers for Change for different speaking engagements, because that's what makes me happy, where I know I can say one or two things to an audience, and a few people come over to me after that meeting, after that speech, I should say, and they say, hey, what you just said really meant a lot. By the way, I've been struggling with this, I've been struggling with that. And it's such a beautiful connection, because I know these are people that can never open up to anybody. So at that point, I can't sponsor them per se, but I'm affiliated with Banyan Rehabilitation Centers, Banyan Treatment, and Turning Point, and I'm able to get them treatment. If somebody is a little bit limited on funds, what a gift to be able to get them, to be like, would you like to go to a 28-day treatment center? Are you ready? Are you really desperate? And I can make one phone call, and Banyan Treatment, and like I said, or Turning Point will open up a bed for somebody. That to me is my level of giving back. Just to give somebody that fresh start is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, I mean, when we save others, we're really saving ourselves, because you and I both know what it feels like to be so desperate that death sounds like a good idea, you know. So I think it's such important work that you're doing. I'm so grateful that you wrote this book with Kristen. I have a million more questions for you. I want to be respectful of your time. There's a couple more questions I want to ask you, though, because you mentioned that you weren't like super religious or anything, but I think it's so important and so interesting how people's concept of God develops, like from the beginning to now. How was your concept of God evolved over the nearly 10, well, you've been sober 10 years now, right?
10 years.
Yeah. How has your concept of God evolved?
Well, I grew up Jewish. I'm still Jewish. I'm proud of it. I don't really go to temple much anymore, but I was bar mitzvahed and all that, and it was important to my parents. Like hear everybody's conception of it, but it never really stuck. It never meant anything. And obviously, when I started getting truly spiritually sober and seeing the gifts and having these amazing God moments that would happen, I some of those mind-blowing freaking God moments you can never imagine.
Tell me a story.
That's going to just blow you away.
And lay it on me.
So when that started happening, and I would tell my mom, I go, look, nothing against being Jewish. For me, religion is for people afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have been there.
Amen.
And I'm spiritual. And she had to respect it. And so let me tell you a couple of these God moments. I'm in Montreal on my 2-year sober birthday. I'm landing to meet a couple clients. It's like 9:00 at night in the summer. And I get outside the airport. I'm happy, joyous, and free. Everything's amazing. I'm actually listening to an AA audiobook speaker on the flight, and I land, and there's just a smell in the air that brought me back to 2 years and 6 months earlier, where I thought about the strip clubs, the partying, the life. This is like, I talk about that cutting, baffling, and powerful. And I couldn't find a meeting, so I decided not to go out with my friends. I listened to audiobooks. I went back to the hotel right away, and I woke up the next morning. This is before Uber existed, and I go down to the concierge. I said, look, I need a car service. Could you please get me some phone numbers? I need to go to downtown Montreal because I found a meeting on 1:00. Guy gave me 5 numbers. Might have even more. Arlina, it was crazy. A big list. So I just called the first one. And they have a driver come get me at 12:30. Get to the meeting 20 minutes later. I go into the clubhouse to open up the door, and it's locked. Big tinted glass with the AA triangle. I go to the side of the building. I look inside. It looks completely empty. I have my whole day planned ahead of me after this business meeting starting at 3:00. So I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I land with this feeling last night. I have to go to bed. I do the right thing, planning on going to a meeting. I go back into the car. Now I'm getting annoyed. I called the toll-free number in Montreal. They said, we're so sorry, Darren from New Jersey, but that meeting's no longer there. There's a meeting at 3:00, about 30 minutes from now. I say, I can't make it. I said, oh my God, I can't believe this. I hang up the phone. The driver with the heavy French accent turns around. He goes, are you AA? And I said, yes. I said, yes, sir, I'm in AA. He pulls out of his neck a 25-year medallion and says, so am I. We had a meeting for 40 minutes with dealing with the traffic heading back to the hotel. He just celebrated 25 years. Okay. To this day, we still keep in touch.
Do you really?
And, yeah, right? Tell me about it. I got the next one I'm going to tell you is really going to blow you away.
I got the goosebumps.
Yeah, this next one, puts that one to shame. So we still keep in touch. His name's Nelson. Yeah, I'm going to show you as I tell you this next story, because I don't know if you can capture it on the screen. So the next one, on my 9-year sober birthday, 5 months after my dad passes away, Steve in my office has an event for Michael O'Keefe and Cindy Morgan, two of the stars from the movie Caddyshack. And of all places, you ready? Akron, Ohio. So I'm like, I'm going. He's like, why the hell would you want to go to Akron? I'm like, bro. He's like, and isn't it on your sober birthday? I'm like, yes. And he's like, oh, it's Akron. What the hell's in Akron? I was like, you kidding me? My life is in Akron. The reason I am who I am today is because of Akron. It's Dr. Bob's house. And so it's like, oh my God, because he heard of it from me because you're going to Akron. So I made sure that day that I had a couple hours carved out. And this is the best. So on the way over there, I'm on the phone with my sponsor, Steve, who says, what a gift, man. Your 9-year birthday and your words started it all. Tens of millions of people from a hopeless state of mind have recovered from, these two guys. And I said, tell me about it. He goes, your dad is looking down so proud right now. I said, I know. I know. I call my uncle who gave me this gift of finding the rooms. Said the same thing. He goes, man, he goes, your father, he goes, would be smiling ear to ear right now if he knew. And I said, no. I said, I know. I call my buddy Dan. He's got 30 years in Orange County, my spiritual brother. And I told him the same thing. He calls me LB. I call him BB, big brother. He calls me LB, little brother.
Right.
Little brother, I'm so proud of you. He goes, what a beautiful thing. He goes, your dad is going to be there today when you walk into that house. He goes, please thank Dr. Bob and Bill W. for me for the life that they gave me. I walk up. For anybody who's been there, there's 12 steps as you walk up Dr. Bob's house. There is actually 12 steps. This man greets me. Word for word says to me, welcome home, son. And this is what he looked like. This is on the front steps of Dr. Bob's house.
It says dad on his shirt.
Yep.
Oh my God. That's amazing. It says dad.
Isn't that unbelievable?
That is crazy.
I mean, that was the one that just, it's hard to say to get blown away when you've got, I think, 10 years, but that one, I was like, holy crap. And I teared up and he teared up. And I told him, I was like, today's my 9-year sober birthday. He goes, then give me a hug. I go, no, man. I go, it's bigger than that. On the way over here, I lost my dad 5 months ago. 3 of my spiritual brothers just mentioned how much my dad has something to do with this look at your shirt. Complete strangers. And he's been a greeter at Dr. Bob's house for over 30 years, this gentleman. And we're sitting there hugging each other.
Oh my gosh. That is
I tell that story at meetings around the world and people are just like the hair on their neck stands up. I mean,
yeah.
But I think the same way I got to say goodbye to my dad, even though he was in a coma and he kept coming out of it. And I had that moment. My dad was conscious when I got to say bye to him. I think God gives us rewards when we do the right thing and when we give back to people. And we don't give back because you're looking for the rewards. When you give back for the right motives, because it feels good, because you want to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's when I think the blessings really come back to us. And again, not that we do it for that, but I just think by default, when you do that, when you live that life of being a giver and not a taker, you don't need to be in recovery. Those blessings are in front of every single one of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's such a pure motive, just trying to help somebody out of the hell that we were in at one time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that story. That was amazing. I typically wrap up the podcast with asking, that's ODAAT Chat, which stands for One Day at a Time. So do you have a process, like a daily process or a weekly routine that you live by to help you stay sober one day at a time?
What I do today?
Yeah. Do you have like a daily or weekly routine for your sobriety?
I'm a routine guy, but I've also come to accept that change is good because I think a lot of us don't like change in recovery.
Yeah.
I've learned to accept that change is good, like moving now to California and all these things that I never thought I would do.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning, I'll eat a little breakfast. First thing I do is I get to the gym. I'm in the gym probably 6 days a week. I think that's the most important thing to me. Get the endorphins going, get the dopamine levels, the natural ones going. And then I'll come back, shower, get ready for a day in the office. And my meetings are usually in the middle of the day, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. That breaks it up. Mm-hmm. And because like I said, in our line of work, there's extreme highs, there's extreme lows, there's in-betweens, there's craziness. And I feel that 1 hour break that I get, I can come back and be a much better Darren and boss for my other agents that work with me. Mm-hmm. And it's true. I just come back refreshed. And then, after that, it's hanging with my dog, my fiance, watching TV, chilling out. I'm not really much of an event person anymore. I go when I need to go with clients. Either I'll take an Uber or my own car service, not because I think about putting myself at risk. It just gets boring. You just get tired earlier because, you're living a more responsible life. So I can't be out till 12 o'clock midnight and not get to bed till 1:30 and only get 5-6 hours sleep. And that's it. I mean, everything's pretty simple now. I still enjoy everything as much as I ever had before, but I know that I have to put myself first, and my routine is super important to do that. And it benefits everybody else in my life because of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Self-care is so important. Do you practice prayer meditation in the morning?
I do mine at night. I never really did it in the morning. I hear that people do. When I go to bed at night and turn it over and thank God for one more day and ask him to do the same for me tomorrow. And I pray for certain people in my life. I don't pray for things.
Sure.
I pray for people, and I pray for, certain people that are suffering health problems, financial issues, stress issues, ailments. And I thank him for giving me this gift one more day and allowing me to share it with the world. And just ask him to give it to me tomorrow. So I've always been, again, I think it's just a product of being routine. I've never, ever prayed in the morning. It's always before I go to bed at night.
Yeah, no, everybody does something different. I'm definitely a morning girl, but some of us are high maintenance, so I have to pray at night too.
I hear a lot of people are in the mornings. I just think it's, like I said, it's just been my routine. And I think for me, because I'm so wound down, I can really get into that Zen place too, where I really feel it sometimes. There's times where I didn't even realize that I'm down there for 2, 3, 4 minutes, and I open my eyes with either tears in my eyes, there's, goosebumps on my arm. I mean, I just get into a space where it's like the day's over and I just let it go, and I'm filled with gratitude and appreciation, no matter what type of day it was. That as long as I didn't pick up, I'll get through it, whatever it is.
That's beautiful. When early recovery, did you read any books, or were there any special books or readings that you really helped you in the beginning?
I'll tell you, 3 Years Sober probably was the first book I read outside of what was it? The big book. Chris Herron and I were introduced by a lady friend of mine, Jane, who hired Magic for a keynote speech, and she kept telling me about him, and I never called him. She goes, "You would get along with him so well. He's so huge in recovery. ESPN did an award-winning documentary on him. There's a best-selling book." And I don't know, my head was up my ass. So for like 4 or 5 months, I didn't call him. And then one day I come into the office and I said to Steve, who went to grad school in Springfield, Massachusetts, I just got to know it's a really cool guy, Chris Herron. Have you ever heard of him? Steve's like jaw hit the floor. He goes, "Dude, he was the greatest freaking college basketball player ever." He goes, "He is like the guru of the recovery industry." I'm like, "It sounds like," I'm like, "Dude, it sounds like he's got treatment centers." And he goes, his Unguarded documentary on ESPN was the greatest documentary, Emmy Award winning, that they've ever done. And so I was forced to read his book, Basketball Junkie, which was him and I are still spiritual brothers to this day. We got sober 29 days apart.
Wow.
I blow him up all the time. I hit him with text messages. "You're the GOAT," meaning the greatest of all time in the recovery field. Which does 250 speaking engagements a year. And
wow, that's a lot.
There's nobody like him. Nobody like him. And so I that was probably the first book I read, which was good for me too, because we were kind of in the same worlds. He was a professional basketball player, had it all from the outside, but inside was dying a slow death. So probably getting back to the book, it was the big book, and then Chris Herron's Basketball Junkie.
No, that's super awesome. Yeah, and now we have your book, which I'm super excited. We'll put links to it in the show.
AmyHotBook.com. You can go on Amazon also. And last Tuesday, God gave me another blessing. I landed in LA, as I told Anna David and Krista McGinnis, who I have so much love for, my publisher, Light Hustler, that it made Amazon bestseller in 7 different categories in 4 different countries: Australia, Canada, England, and the USA. And
my God.
It's not even out yet until Tuesday.
Yeah, you can get it on pre-order. That's amazing.
It was just look, I had a lot of help. When Mark Cuban shoots it out to 8-9 million followers, and Magic tweets it out, and Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Kevin Harrington and Denise Richards, and so many, Dennis Rodman, they all really, Dr. Drew too, gives a few million followers and blew it right out for me when I asked him. It's just amazing, that here, when I look back and thought what would have been my biggest Achilles heel and the biggest curse in my life turned out to be the greatest blessing I could ever ask for. So I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's the best, worst thing that ever happened, right?
Yep.
One last question. What advice would you have for your 12-year-old self who felt the need to take something?
Yeah, try to speak up a little bit more and tell somebody, even if it's a single person, what you're feeling like. Don't hide it. There's something not right by that extraordinary feeling that you had. It's just not a normal reaction. Your friends would not feel that way. There has to be another way to break through and understand why you feel the way that you feel. And look, I don't regret it, but I certainly would have sent myself 26 years of hell if my 38-year-old Darren Prince can tell the 12-year-old, what the future was going to be ahead of me. Again, it's tough at that age. You're in those early developmental years, and
brutal. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much. That was beautiful. I'm so grateful that you came on to my humble little podcast to share your story. I'm super excited to share it, and everybody should read your book. I love Kristen and Anna, and thank you so much. You were amazing. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Let's meet when we're in LA. You'll send me your info. I can't wait to meet you and give you a big hug.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye. One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting ODAATchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.